obviously far more astute as than I am in this area. But I think in order to understand a little bit more about my humility in all this is because my wife and I had to deal with this issue for many years. We've been married for 16 years. And when we first got married, our plan was, since we were a little older, that we would begin a family right away. And when it didn't happen, it was something that caused us a lot of distress. About 8 months after I joined, or was invited to join the Family Life Office, eight months after we had decided that we weren't going to have our treatments anymore, I was invited to join the Family Life Office. And the very first thing that was on my desk from the director at the time was to do something with couples experiencing infertility. So immediately my thoughts came to the divine providence in all this, and God must have had a sense of humor. So, needless to say, it was one of the things that I really did try to emphasize in the beginning part of my tenure. Let's talk a little bit about the problem. Little statistics here. Roughly 20% of the population of childbearing age is going to have some difficulty, if not complete difficulty, conceiving. And sometimes that number goes up to 10%. I mean, an extra 10%, 30%. The reasons, as we can see right now, are marriage later in life. The average age of people getting married the first time today is roughly 27 years. And then they decide to lay low a bit on becoming parents. And so by the time they're ready to start conceiving, they're already in their early to mid-30s. And for women, you naturally start to compromise your infertility at 35. Another reason are STDs. Now, I need to clarify that in this group. I mean sexually transmitted diseases, not doctors of sacred theology. So let's get that straight. But STDs are a problem today. That is growing, and so is the number of cases that lead to infertility. The environment is a big factor. Contraception and abortion also is a big factor. Dr. Haas alluded to the IUD. It scars the endometrium, but there are synthetic oral contraceptives also do a number on a woman's natural fertility. Another part of the problem is a lack of understanding of artificial reproductive technology. It's very complicated at times. The terms that are used are very clinical and technical. The couple oftentimes will trust in the expertise of their specialists because they're the ones that can make this happen. And not only do they have trust in them, but their vulnerability is at times very much enhanced. They're very vulnerable to what these men and women offer them in terms of having them conceive child of their own. And I think that another problem with all this is misinformation of church teaching. Oftentimes couples will seek out resources, whether it be human or otherwise, which tell them what they want to hear. And the fact is that there are plenty of these resources available for them, and that's a cause for concern as well. A lot of times couples are given answers that address the morality of the specific procedures without explanations as to why they're immoral. Gone are the days where anybody can say to anyone else, jump, and that person will say how high. We don't live in that kind of world anymore. And for us not to be able or willing to give reasons as to why some of these problems or moral problems exist is really doing the couple and ourselves a disservice. And I think lastly, couples are just generally, or people in general, I think, are uninformed on the truth and meaning of human sexuality. So if we can look at the reality of it, we have to take a deep look into the couple's heart. Because infertility really strikes at the inner core of the human person. Now, the Holy Father would tell us in a lot of his latest documents that sexuality is a component, a fundamental component of a person's personhood. Our sexuality and our bodies are the means to giving and receiving of the gift of each other to one another. And because sexuality is such a part of who we are as human persons, we think, act, and react, I guess, through the lens of our sexuality. We see things in male and female eyes. We speak in male and female terms. And we're not going to be able to escape the fact that masculinity and fatherhood are deeply intertwined together, and so is femininity and motherhood. In the civil discourse today, we seem to try to separate parenthood from the descriptive terms of our masculinity and femininity, but they can't be separated. They're intertwined with each other. There's also a reality of the loss of dignity, and as we go on during this talk, we'll talk a little bit about how dignity is destroyed, maybe of the persons themselves through the various procedures, or the marriage itself can disintegrate. And the dignity of the marital act, I think, comes under question during this time period. And also the dignity of the hope for a child. And we can't forget that. One of the realities is that people and persons or couples come into a marriage with dreams which are shattered. You know, they may dream of who their children are going to look like, what they're going to do for them and with them. And all these dreams kind of vanish when the word that they're having a problem comes to them. So when we address the issues, we have to start really examining as a church, how are we addressing these issues with such couples? And oftentimes I think we react to problems instead of anticipate them. But in this ministry and any other ministry that we're dealing with human persons, it has to be both proactive and reactive. Now, for the proactive, Dr. Haas talked a little bit about the re-evangelization of the culture. And our first speaker talked about combating the language of choice and freedom. Well, the Pope has given us a beautiful document, or a beautiful language called the Theology of the Body. And I really think that the theology of the body is one of the greatest gifts to the church in modern times. Because it gives us a language that will be strictly personal, but it's also a language that's very beautiful and very easy to understand. And I think we do ourselves a disservice if we don't unpack the theology of the body every way we can. I mean, the Holy Father has done that himself. If you read any of his documents, whether it be in social justice issues or family and marriage issues or whatever, he will always use the themes of the theology of the body in it. And he started right from the beginning of his pontificate with the Redemptor Hominis. We saw threads of what this theology of the body was going to be. And I think that from a clergy perspective, I think it's important that we really start to unpack that and preach upon it in marriage. There should be no reason why couples come to us in marriage preparation and hearing this language for the very first time. And the reason why they're hearing it for the very first time is that it's not a part of our catechetical formation, which it ought to be, and it's not a part of our homiletic and pastoral approach. Now, we don't need to be preaching on this every week, but I'm sure that there's times during the course of the 3-year cycle that we cannot put components and elements of the theology of the body into a 10-minute or 15-minute homily. Another way that we can be proactive in all this is looking at our marriage preparation programs. We have a wonderful forum now to start preparing the couple's hearts that 20% of these people who are sitting in this room, whether it be 10 couples, 20 couples, or 35 couples, may wind up in a fertility specialist group. We don't want to bring downers into our marriage preparation programs, but we want to be real to these people. And it also has a very self-serving purpose, too. Because when we start interjecting the concept of infertility to engaged couples, we could also start interjecting concepts of natural family planning to couples. Now, NFP is not the end-all and the be-all of infertility treatments, and nor should it be. But it's the very first place to start when you're having compromises in your fertility. If you're married 2 years or 3 years and you're not doing anything to stop yourselves from having children and you're not, well then we're having a problem somewhere. And then through the fertility charts we can start identifying the problems. This will help the couples. I just recently, my wife and I were part of a marriage preparation event in our diocese, and the natural family planning and sexuality discussion, which was only to last an hour, lasted 2 hours. Because the couples were genuinely interested in how NFP could help them identify problems before they even begin trying to have a child. So we have a teachable moment here, and we ought to take advantage of it, which will get us into a deeper participation in natural family planning, but also an awareness for the couples that their marriage isn't going to be maybe the storybook. We get married and then we decide to have children, and now we have the amount of children that we want, put up the picket fences and 2-car garage, and let's go on with life. In the reactive end of our addressing the issue of infertility, we have to now start looking at this from a Gestalt perspective. You know, any of us who are familiar with Gestalt will tell us that the whole is equal to more than the sum of the parts. And in teaching medical ethics to nursing students, we've always made a big deal out of healing the whole person, which is heart, mind, body, and socially as well. So we also have to take this holistic approach and this Gestalt approach in our dealings with couples experiencing infertility, and deal and address the issues of the heart before we even get into the place where we start addressing the moral issues first. Now I'll give you an example, and I'm sure any of you have been in pastoral care would either get a phone call or a visit from a couple or a man or a woman wanting to know what the church's understanding or directive is on this issue or that issue. And I've received a call a number of times where a couple say, what does the church feel about this? So they're asking me a question, now I have to answer it honestly, and I answer their question, and then the anger comes. I don't know how you guys could talk like this. You guys are back in the Stone Ages, and I don't even know why I bother calling. And then they just rant and rave. So I let them rant and rave for a little while. And then after they've stopped, they said, all right, what has this experience have done to you as a person or your marriage? And then the tears come. But it's only until they vent the anger and get to the point of tears where you can start addressing the issues with these people. So we have to allow for that reality that comes to us and not get really upset with it. We have to look at what psychologists have talked to us about the stages of grief, and I want to list them because I think this is important for us to understand the heart of the couple going through this. In shock or disbelief, one of the things that a couple would say to themselves or to each other is, why does this happen to us? How could this possibly be? What did I do or what did we do to deserve this? And they have to really explore that within their minds. Anger and resentment sometimes follows, and the anger will come towards themselves, maybe. Maybe it'll go even towards the church, the anger or resentment towards God. You'll find that a lot of times they'll avoid social gatherings where children are involved. Maybe there'll be a shower they'll miss or whatever because there's this deep resentment. Despair and depression would follow after that. It's a sense of isolation and loneliness. You walk into a house and now all of a sudden, after a couple months of this stuff, the walls kind of echo. There's also a sense of isolation from the parish community because oftentimes if there's a school or if there's CCD programs or whatever, a lot of the programs will center around parish family organizations, PTA, all that. And so couples going through this will feel, where do I even fit in with the parish? Now, we don't have to stop doing these family-centered deals because there's a lot more of us that are trying to limit the amount of people that we bring into the world, than there are people who have a hard time bringing people into the world. So you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. But on the same hand, we need to also start looking at our programs and see how is it that we could maybe invite such couples into the life of the parish. Panic will sometimes come in. It's another stage of grief. And this is the point where obsession can come in, to find anything that we can do to help ourselves with this stuff. There's guilt. We may go back to our life before we were married or whatever and see, well, maybe it was because I did this, or maybe because I had that, or maybe I did the other thing that God's punishing me. Maybe there's guilt that they can't give their spouse a child, or maybe there's guilt that their parents that they love will never be able to enjoy your children. And finally, we reach the place of acceptance. And in the acceptance end of it, we see that couples will come to the understanding that they can live with children, a life without children of their own. They may not be out of pain. That pain may never leave them. But at least they feel that there can be something more to their marriage. And that's where I think the pastoral minister comes in, is to help the couple to revision their own marriage, explore to them what their marital vocation can be without children. I mean, many times you think, well, vocation is a vocation to the priesthood or to the married life or whatever, but it's not. It's more than just that. And I think that we need to expand our vocabulary as to what the vocation is, especially in light of this area, to help give the couple experiencing this a little deeper understanding that their marriage does have meaning. It may not have the same meaning as my brother or my aunt or uncle or my parents, but it has a different meaning for me. And I think pastoral ministers have to really spend time with the couple looking at what is this particular vocation for this particular marriage. Another thing that we can do subjectively to help couples is to see that the child is a gift and not a right. The Catechism will tell us, and Dona Vitae will tell us, that we have a right to the acts that give us children, but we do not have a right to children. Because children are gifts from God, they are also the personification of the love of the couple. And when we commodify childbirth, we have the problems that we've been having all along. I can remember a case where a couple had gone to a fertility clinic, and they were looking for a specific type of genetic compound for their child, and they were both white, and the child that was born was black. Well, now they're suing the fertility clinic. This child now is probably going to go through a lot of scarring. That what has happened to me, my parents are white and I'm black, how could this possibly be? And we have a law case. When we commodify the child, we get into more than just moral problems, we get into legal problems as well. And when we're doing this, we always have to emphasize the good of the couple and give reasons why these procedures will always be immoral if there are, whichever ones they're talking about at the time, in light of their inherent dignity as human persons. The couples will go through great lengths to conceive a child. They will bear the humility of the testing and treatment. They will accept financial burdens, because much of this stuff isn't covered by insurance. They will endure stress in their marriage and their marriage bed. Risk the health hazards. There are a number of health hazards that happen, especially to women, through a lot of these procedures. And they do this all with the idea that it'll be worth it in the end when they're able to carry their children in their arms or rock the child to sleep. But is it worth it? I would have to say, in most cases, it's not. And couples are blinded by this desire until they can't ignore the effects on themselves or on their marriage any further. So when we're helping couples to come to terms with this, we have to avoid two extremes. One extreme is providentialism. If God wants us to have children, we'll have children. The other extreme is unbridled science. Like the gentleman that Dr. Haas was talking about, that science is the end all and the be all of human existence. So we do this by going back to Scripture. And in Scripture we know, and we're called to fill the earth and to subdue it. And what that means, from a pastoral perspective, that yes, we are free to subdue the earth and have dominion over our bodies and try to make our bodies work properly. That's what medicine's all about. If we didn't have this mandate to perfect creation, then we might as well just pack it up and go home and never see a doctor, because that would be immoral, and we know that's not true. So we can make our bodies work properly. However, we also have to look at Scripture when God told Adam, you can eat of all the trees of the garden, except for the knowledge of the tree of good and evil. Human freedom is far-reaching. You can eat of all the trees, but it's not without limits. So the very first thing that we do, after we assure them that they can find ways to help themselves, is eliminate all those procedures which are objectively evil. And in a group like this, I don't think we need to discuss them in this forum, because we know what's objectively evil. I just want to bring to light one of the procedures now, which is the preferred way of doing IVF, vitro fertilization, and it's called intracytoplasmic sperm injection, ICSI. Most fertility specialists now will use ICSI because it gives them a better success rate. But what the problem is with this is that it not only is a form of IVF which makes it immoral, but it's also a procedure that takes an individual sperm and injects it into an individual egg. Now, in a normal ejaculate, we have 100 million sperm. Only a handful, a fraction of a percentage, even reaches the ovum. Now this doctor or this attendant is looking at the sperm which he sees or she sees is the best, picks it up and injects it. We're dumbing down the genetic pool of the human person at this point, because that chances are that this particular sperm would not reach this particular egg. So besides all the other immoralities that IVF offers us, ICSI offers us even more. And we have to be aware of this, because I don't really think that the average person going through infertility treatments knows this. In fact, I know that to be true. So once we've eliminated the objective moral immorality of all this, we have to now start readdressing the subjective issues. And the subjective reality is very simple. Human dignity must always be preserved, defended, and protected. Now, there are four ways that human dignity is destroyed in this process. One of them is the dignity of the man or the woman. Again, and we're over lunch, there's no need to be graphic. And I promised that my partners that I wouldn't be graphic at lunchtime. It's not something that would enhance a person's image of themselves. So their dignity may be eroded through all this. If their dignity is eroded, then regardless of what treatment they're trying to do, and regardless if it's objectively okay to do this, subjectively, they're destroying their dignity in the process. For this particular couple, I would advise them not to go any further. The second dignity is the dignity of the marriage relationship. A marriage can be destroyed through this. I could tell you that I'm very grateful to have a holy woman for a wife. And I'm very grateful to know that we went into this with the same understanding and the same set of ideals. But if I didn't, I probably would not be married today because of the stress that this put on our marriage. If this is happening, then regardless of the morality of this particular act that this couple is pursuing, it would be immoral for this particular couple. The marital act, extremely important. And as a church, we've come under tremendous pressure through Humana Vitae to preserve the unitive and procreative aspects of the marital act. And it's something that's expected of us, and it's something that making becomes baby making. There's a shift of attitude from lover to beloved to function and performance. It disintegrates the whole purpose of being together and expressing your love. Because I'm not seeking my beloved, I'm seeking what my beloved can give me, and that's a child. You know, we often look at lust in terms of sexual impurity, but lust is much deeper. It's whatever we feel that we consume from the other person. What can we take from the other person? And in this instance, I'm sorry to say, that if we're seeking procreative sex only, we're acting out of lust. Because we're lusting after the person's gametes. We're lusting after a person's ability to give me a child. No matter how you slice it, it's immoral. Some of these things we can't discuss with our couples right off the bat. Because some of these things are so deep to them that it would take some time with us to get to this place where we're even discussing these things. But yet this is a reality that they need to know. Another area of concern is the stability of the family finances. The cost is quite high for a person seeking artificial reproductive technology. The cost for metotropins alone, or the fertility drugs alone, would run $500, $600 a course, and oftentimes need 2 or 3 courses before the month is over. So you're talking about a lot of money. You're also talking about a 25% success rate. Now, I don't know about you, but $15,000 for a 25% return is not a very good investment of my money, especially working for a diocese. Sorry. Why do you think you teach it? Anyway, so we have a big challenge for us. So before we get into the challenges, let's look at and review some basic premises of natural law. And a definition of natural law that I give my nursing students is human participation through reason in the divine plan. Now, it's very Thomistic, but it's very real, especially when we're dealing with this issue. As human persons, we participate in everything. But if we're really actively seeking infertility treatments, to the extent that some do, are we participating in God's plan for love? Or are we trying to seek equality with God? Very familiar section in Scripture that I think would be remiss if we didn't talk about. The serpent said to Eve, "Did God really say we aren't to be doing this? Or you aren't to eat of the tree?" How many times have we heard that? Did God really say that we really can't have children? He wants us to have children. How could this be wrong? Did God really say? And then, no, God does not want you to have this. Because He knows once you eat of this, you will be like Him, knowing good from evil. Eve sought equality with God through her own set of ways and not through participating in His plan. What do you think we do with a lot of these art procedures? Did God really say we can't be doing these things? He wants us to have children. But He wants us to participate through our reason in His plan for love and life. Eve got kicked out of the garden for that. Satan did the same thing and got thrown out of heaven for that. Now, obviously, we're not going to present these stark realities to our couples that come to us because we want to heal them and not alienate them. But this is what's happening. We cannot escape it. Another piece of natural law is very important. That which is objectively evil will always be so, and no subjective reality can make it good. Sometimes pastoral ministers forget that. It's that old end justifies the means that was around and so prevalent with proportionalism that the Holy Father debunked in Veritatis Splendor. The ends do not justify the means. Another piece of natural law that we have to keep in our minds, and sometimes this is difficult for us too, is that subjective realities which impair the moral agent's will or freedom mitigate the culpability that makes for that moral agent. So to say that in English, if your mind and your will is so impaired, then what you do is no less evil, but it minimizes your guilt. Intense emotion associated with infertility oftentimes impairs the will. We cannot forget that. It oftentimes impairs the will. And the other piece is that subjective realities make a good act evil for a given individual. We have to keep these premises in our minds when we're dealing with couples experiencing infertility, because this gives us an anchor and a base from which to work. And we also have to look at the true meaning of compassion. A lot of times I hear people use compassion in a way it's not meant to be used. Oh, God will understand. He knows you're trying to do the right thing. That's not compassion. That's enabling. Compassion comes to us through two Latin words, cum, which means with, and passio, which means suffering. So true compassion is to suffer with someone. And that's where I think our greatest challenge comes. Because couples and all people have the right to hear the truth. It's a natural, intrinsic right of everyone who lives. We have a right to hear the truth. And since rights presuppose duties, then others have a duty to present the truth because it's their right to hear that. However, we can't just speak the hard word to them. We must be willing to speak the hard word to them in love and in truth. And we must make a commitment to walk with these people every inch of the way, to help them get from point A to point B. So in conclusion, I'd like to end with our Holy Father's words, be not afraid. He says that to us all the time, and he started right from the beginning in Redemptor Omnis, be not afraid. So for our couples, we have to say, be not afraid of God. He has not abandoned you. And this is not a curse. It's not a judgment. Be not afraid of the church. Because the same document tells us that man is the primary way for the church. Without man, the church would not exist. So we can't be afraid of her. Frankly speaking, people are afraid of the church because the way we react to them. We cannot be chimpanzees sporting a machine gun. We can't be that way. We should never have been that way in the first place, and we can't be that way now. We have to be able to peer in their hearts, look at where they're coming from, and be able to articulate the timeless teachings of the church the same way that Jesus did, and the same way that his vicar on earth today is doing. So, I think I have a few minutes. Do I? If anyone wants to ask, if anyone wants to ask a question, I'll be willing to answer. I was told when I first came in here that I was the only person outside the Cardinal who wasn't going to have to take questions from you guys. So I felt, well, I don't think that that's right. I think that he should be the only one that's not able to do that. So if anybody has a question, I'd be willing to take it. Yes?
I've heard that couples practicing natural family planning have a very low divorce rate. Could you supply any details there?
The question is that the gentleman heard that couples experiencing natural family planning have a very low divorce rate. Yes, I can confirm that. I can't cite you statistics because I don't have them present. But you can check with Teresa Notare down at the NCCB who would be able to give you that information. One of the reasons why natural family planning is such a good marriage builder is because that the couples don't take advantage of themselves anymore. And that when they're really and truly working together to limit or space their childbirth, they're doing that in a way that causes them some kind of pain and sacrifice during 5, 6, or 7 days during the month. And during that time, couples learn to do what they're supposed to be doing all along, and that's dating and courting. In today's culture, we forget that when we're married, I mean, there's an old Italian song, I forget who sang it, but the words were, wives should always be lovers too. And I think Robert Goulet sang that, if I'm not mistaken. But husbands should always be lovers too. Husbands and wives should be lovers before they're husbands and wives. And what happens when we're practicing natural family planning is it gives us that opportunity naturally to become lovers again and to court. So instead of hopping in a sack, you could take a nice walk or go to see a show or treat your spouse with some way that you did when you were first, before you even decided to get married. So I think that we lose sight of this whole concept of courting, and natural family planning helps us to do that. So from that perspective, I could say yes, that the divorce rate is greatly lowered because people learn how to date again. Back there?
I hope you can hear me. Can you address just very briefly another flip side of a pastoral issue, because there are many couples who are already sterilized and they want to be good Catholics, but they made this mistake.
Right.
Could you address that issue in just one or two ideas?
Well, the question was, what do you do with couples who have been sterilized and who seek to really make their lives right again? I'm going to be very limited in what I could address in this because, number one, I'm not a physician, and number two, I think there are a lot more nuances to this that I'm prepared to address. However, I can say this. And one of the things that I can say is that there are some forms of sterilization that can be reversed. You know, I'm aware of some doctors who will reverse vasectomies. I'm aware of some doctors that will reverse tubal ligations. I don't know what their success rate is, but that's at least a place to start exploring. The other place that we need to explore is the tremendous font of mercy that God gives us through the sacrament of reconciliation. Again, not being a member of the clergy, I think that reconciliation will go a long way in helping rectify themselves with God, and that ought to be availed to them. John Kickley from the Couple League has made some comments and some suggestions. I'm not sure I agree with all of them, but I think he addresses the issue quite extensively, that may be another place for us to look. But I think we have to look at, in my opinion, I think we have to look at the person's sincerely having the metanoia experience of saying, okay, I've done something wrong, I'm sorry for that, and now let's just move on with our life. If it can be reversed, then I think they should try to reverse it. If they can't, then we need to, I think, maybe address this issue with maybe Dr. May or someone else who's a little more experienced in this than I am. Yes?
Well, just maybe to turn the coin on the other side, when Paul VI had that delicate thing of deciding, and he did, there was a case, and I'm not using numbers here, the 50 against the 6 or 7, Ottaviani, Ford, etc., etc. But there seemed to be a certain wisdom of the 50 who was summoned by Paul VI, namely Patsy Crowley, the family movement, and couples that were moving then for an advocacy of, say, contraceptive intercourse in the overall context of the marriage. So I'm wondering what you might see as perhaps residual wisdom in this, whatever the 50 people honestly intentioned and wanting to throw light in the current situation. What might you say to that?
Well, first, what would I think the question is, what would I say to those who say there is inherent wisdom in the majority report? The only wisdom that matters to me is the wisdom of the magisterium. Now, I'm sure that these men and women had a lot of things that they had to say that would certainly be very valid things. However, if I were to spend all the time justifying their approach, I would not be doing the church or myself any service. Because what we ought to be addressing is the wisdom of Humana Vitae, and not the wisdom of the majority report. We have plenty of people who are debating the issue of the majority report. Plenty of them, and they've been doing it for 30 years. I do not have to continue doing what they're doing because they've already done it for me. My job is to flip the tables and say, this is the reasons why we should put our heart and soul in Humana Vitae.
Deeply appreciative to more than wisdom, but then, even if you say, the magisterium, the complaint again today is very much that this was vertically, often comes down vertically, and it needs the experience of the men, the married people, etc. So,
Well, Father, I hate to say this to you, but I'm a living experience of the dangers of infertility, unbridled infertility treatment. And I could give those persons names of hundreds of other couples just like me that have seen the destruction of human dignity from this perspective. Now, one of the things that I think that we could say to those couples, in honesty, is that we could see the damage done to the lives of the couples who experience procreative sex only. We could see that. And the reason why we could see it is because there's pain involved with this. When you flip it around for unitive sex only, there are the same dangers, the exact same dangers, but you don't see them. And the reason why you don't see them is because here you're dealing with pleasure, and here you're dealing with pain. So if we could address the infertility end of this adequately, we're going to have the residual effect of seeing an effective witness to the opposite as well.